She loved her husband, but one desperate choice brought her to the edge of darkness. A hidden shrine, a mysterious native doctor, and secrets that could destroy her family. Will love survive lies, or will betrayal tear them apart forever? Before you continue, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this powerful story. The night in Accra was restless. A loud rumble of thunder rolled across the clouds, shaking the dusty roofs of Accra. Dogs barked, power flickered. The wind chased through the narrow streets like a spirit hunting for voices. And inside a small blue house on Jameson Street, a woman paced back and forth, trembling with fear. Her name was Miriam Fordson, the respected wife of Pastor Richard Fordson, leader of Living Grace Chapel, a fast-growing church near Independence Avenue. On Sundays, people bowed when Miriam walked by. Women whispered that she was the perfect example of modesty. Men spoke of her loyalty and grace, but no one knew what kept her awake at night. Tonight, Miriam held a tiny brown bottle in her hand, oily, with strange symbols carved into its wooden cork. The bottle smelled of herbs, smoke, and something darker. Miriam's heart hammered. "What am I doing?" she whispered. "God forgive me." Another thunderstrike lit the room. It reminded her how her life once looked polished and beautiful, like a Sunday morning sermon, but recently became bitter like spoiled milk. Pastor Richard had changed. He no longer shared affection or warmth. His eyes burned with ambition and pride. He wanted a bigger church, louder applause, more members, more offerings. And in his hunger for success, he pushed Miriam aside like old furniture. For months she tried to pray. For months she tried to talk. But Richard only said, "The work of God comes first." His voice always heavy, always final. Miriam wanted something simple, love, not applause. And that is how her weakness led her into the hands of Dr. Fabian, the feared native doctor of Darkerman Junction, known for charms, secrets, and potions that made men obey. People said he could change destinies. People said he dealt with spirits. And people also said no pastor should ever mention his name. Yet Miriam had gone there, in daylight, with trembling hands. She paid him not with money, but with shame. Dr. Fabian swallowed his words like smoke and murmured, "If you want your husband to love you again, if you want him to listen, you must give something precious, something deeper than money." Miriam didn't ask what. She thought he meant prayers. She thought he meant offerings. She didn't know he meant her body until it was too late. And when she realized, fear and desire melted together into a sin she could never undo. Now she stared at the charm bottle, the product of her betrayal. Suddenly, the front door opened. Miriam jumped, hiding the bottle under a cloth. Pastor Richard entered with cold eyes and a heavy Bible. Rain dripped from his shoulders. He didn't hug her. He didn't greet her. He only asked, "Did you prepare my sermon notes?" "Yes," she whispered, voice shaking. He nodded, dropped the Bible on the table, and walked to his room without noticing the storm in her soul. When the door closed, tears slipped down her face. "Is this marriage worth saving?" Miriam asked the empty room. But destiny was not done with her. Minutes later, her phone buzzed. A text message glowed across the screen. "Did you use the charm, Dr. Fabian?" Miriam's hands froze. Her body almost collapsed. She deleted the message immediately, afraid Richard might see it. But something else happened, something she didn't expect. As Pastor Richard came out again, his expression softened for the first time in months. He walked closer, and touched her shoulder gently. "Miriam," he said, voice steady, "you look tired. Are you well?" It was a small question, but to Miriam it felt like a miracle. The charm was working. Her heart pounded with guilt. Was this love, or was it manipulation? Was it God, or was it the spirits of Dr. Fabian's shrine? Before she could answer, Richard continued, "Tomorrow a famous bishop is visiting our church. We must look united. The ministry depends on it." The charm twisted inside her thoughts like a snake. When love is pursued by force, disaster follows. But Miriam believed she could control the consequences until she heard another message buzz on her phone. This time, it wasn't from Dr. Fabian. It was from an unknown number. "Your sin cannot stay hidden. Nothing done in darkness stays in darkness forever." Miriam gasped. Her fingers turned cold. A new fear entered the story. Someone knew her secret. And secrets are like fire in African storytelling. They never burn one person alone. The storm rested before dawn. Accra woke slowly. Vendors dragged tables to the roadside. The smell of roasted corn floated in the wet air, and taxis honked like impatient goats. But inside the Fordson home, silence sat on every chair. Miriam stared at the charm bottle again, hidden inside her wardrobe under folded wrappers. Her hands itched to throw it away, to break it, to destroy every trace of Dr. Fabian and his sinful demands. But fear tied her fingers. What if I lose Pastor Richard's affection again? The thought sliced her heart. Love was supposed to be holy, but now love tasted like dark medicine, bitter and stolen. Pastor Richard came to the dining table wearing a clean white shirt and polished shoes. His attitude was different, gentler, lighter, almost curious. He ate slowly and kept glancing at Miriam, as if noticing her again after years. "Miriam," he said softly, "I was thinking you should stand beside me when the bishop arrives today. People must see that our home is strong." Those words touched Miriam, but the sweetness brought pain. Was it real affection, or the charm pushing his heart like a puppet? Stakes shifted. Marriage turned into a game between spirits and conscience. Around noon, cars arrived at Living Grace Chapel. The building shone under the Accra sun. Women tied their headscarves boldly. Men adjusted ties. Ushers smiled too wide. Everything smelled like a show, not worship. The Bishop Clarence Dalton, entered with his assistants. He carried power like perfume. Cameras caught every handshake. Pastor Richard walked beside him proudly, introducing Miriam to people as "my jewel, my crown," words he had not used in a long time. But the more Pastor praised her, the more guilt twisted Miriam's gut. Every compliment felt stolen. Every applause felt cursed. During the meeting, Bishop Clarence leaned toward Miriam and whispered gently, "Madam, your eyes carry burden. Is everything well at home?" Miriam forced a smile. "Everything is fine, Bishop," but he was not convinced. Men of his age carried wisdom like scars. Meanwhile, someone stood outside the chapel gates, watching. A hooded figure, patient, unnoticed. By sunset, the bishop left satisfied, and Pastor Richard declared it a breakthrough day for the ministry. He returned home, glowing with excitement. At dinner, he surprised Miriam again. "Tomorrow we will travel to Cape Coast for a weekend retreat," he said. "Just us. We haven't had time for each other." Time, affection, retreat. These were things she once begged for, and now they were falling like blessings, but blessings pushed by sin. As Richard spoke, Miriam's phone vibrated under the table. She checked it secretly. "Dr. Fabian, the spirits are pleased, but you must complete the ritual." Her skin crawled. Complete the ritual? What ritual had she started? She typed quickly, "No, I'm done." Seconds later, another message arrived. "You think love is free? Sacred things always demand payment." Her heart nearly stopped. Richard noticed her trembling hands and asked, "Are you cold?" Before she could answer, a knock hit the door. Sharp, urgent. Richard opened it, expecting a church member. Instead, it was Detective Kenton Briggs, tall, serious, with eyes that never laughed. "Good evening, Pastor," he said plainly. "I need a private word." Pastor Richard led him inside. The mood shifted from celebration to dread. Detective Briggs cleared his throat. "We received a report concerning Living Grace Chapel. Someone claims there is witchcraft involvement around your household and ministry." Miriam froze. Richard frowned. "Detective, that is nonsense." Briggs didn't smile. Accra takes spiritual allegations seriously. Whether through jealousy or truth, they spread fast. I'm here to verify before it becomes public. That word alone threatened everything: marriage, ministry, reputation. Miriam felt her soul tighten. Was someone spying on her? The hooded figure, Dr. Fabian, or someone from church? Briggs continued, "We are also investigating a native doctor called Dr. Fabian from Darkuman Junction. We traced unusual calls from his line. We intend to know if he is influencing certain families." Miriam's blood turned to ice. Pastor Richard looked confused. "What does that have to do with us?" A long silence. Too heavy, too sharp. Briggs ended with a quiet warning. "Pastor, witchcraft leaves footprints, and footprints always lead somewhere." When he left, fear remained, sitting at the table, eating their peace. Richard sighed. Accra people and their rumors. But Miriam knew better. Rumors do not start without fire. Even hidden sin has witnesses. When night fell, Miriam cried silently on her pillow. She thought about running away. She thought about confessing. She thought about death, repentance, and the cost of love. But there was a deeper twist waiting. At 2 a.m., the hooded figure finally moved. He slid a small envelope under the door and disappeared into the darkness. Inside the envelope was a single sentence: "I know what you paid the native doctor with." Miriam screamed without sound. Her sin had found a voice. Miriam stared at the envelope lying on the floor as if it were a snake waiting to strike. Her fingers trembled. Each second felt like a hammer on her chest. Pastor Richard slept in the next room, breathing deeply, unaware of the danger crawling beneath their roof. At first, Miriam refused to touch it. "If I don't open it," she whispered, "the truth will stay asleep." But truth has its own legs. It never sleeps forever. She finally tore the envelope. Inside was no letter, only a thin photograph. The image stole her breath. It was of her and Dr. Fabian inside his shrine. Smoke behind them, his hand on her shoulder, her face full of silent shame. The picture said everything words could not. Her knees weakened. She grabbed the chair for balance, tears burning her eyes. Who took this? Who followed me? Accra was wide, but gossip traveled faster than taxis. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened. Miriam jumped, hiding the photo behind her wrapper. But it was only Pastor Richard, sleepy-eyed. "The retreat in Cape Coast, we leave at 6, he muttered. "Try to rest." Then he turned and went back to bed. How could anyone rest when sin had grown claws. By morning, they packed and drove toward Cape Coast. The sea wind carried salt and secrets. Palm trees swayed as if warning Miriam that the ocean swallowed more than ships. It swallowed destinies. On the way, Richard talked endlessly about church expansion, land proposals, and invitations from foreign preachers. He didn't notice Miriam's silence. He didn't see how her soul bled through her eyes. When they reached the beach resort, Pastor Richard became a different man. He laughed. He touched her waist. He held her hand at dinner. He acted like the husband she once prayed for. And that was the worst part, because the better he became, the heavier her guilt grew. Late at night, while waves roared outside, Miriam slipped into the bathroom and pulled out the photograph. She stared at it under the dull yellow bulb. "This is the price for wanting love," she whispered. "Sin never gives discount." Suddenly, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. "Did you enjoy the retreat? Don't forget who made him love you again." Dr. Fabian. Miriam swallowed a scream. Then another message arrived, cold and poisonous. "The spirits demand completion, or the pastor will lose more than affection." Lose more? What more could be taken? Reputation? Health? Ministry? Life? Fear crawled up her spine. Meanwhile, in the next room, Richard stood on the balcony, talking to someone on the phone. Miriam overheard his voice through the sliding door. "No, Bishop," he said quietly. "The ministry is growing, but my home, my wife, something is changing. I can feel it." His honesty broke her heart. Love was returning, but not from prayer. The next morning, they attended breakfast at the resort. While Richard went to get food, a young waiter approached Miriam quietly. His eyes darted around nervously. He slid a small, folded paper onto her table. "Madam, someone said I should give you this. Please don't say my name." Before she could speak, he walked away fast. Miriam opened the paper. Only 2 words were written. "He knows." Her blood froze. But who was he? Her mind raced. Detective Briggs? Pastor Richard? Dr. Fabian? The hooded figure? Before she could think further, a familiar voice spoke behind her. "Madam Miriam, enjoying Cape Coast. I see." She turned and nearly dropped the note. Detective Briggs stood there, casual shirt, hands in pockets, eyes as sharp as a scalpel. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. "I'm never just visiting, Weki," he replied. "Rumors travel fast in Ghana. I follow the wind." He leaned closer. "Tell me something, madam. What would a woman trade to fix a broken marriage? Money? Hope? Or something darker?" Miriam's lips wouldn't move. Briggs smiled, slow, knowing, unsettling. "Do not answer. In Accra, answers reveal themselves without help." Pastor Richard returned with plates, unaware of the storm sitting at his table. The detective nodded politely and walked away, leaving silence as heavy as cement. As they drove back to Accra that afternoon, Miriam kept watching cars behind them. Paranoia settled like dust. By evening, they reached home. Richard went to prepare for Sunday's sermon. Miriam rushed to her wardrobe. She lifted the wrapper. The charm bottle was gone. Her screams shook the house. Pastor Richard rushed in. "Miriam, what is wrong?" She pointed at the empty space, trembling. She couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. Richard looked confused. "What was there? Why are you panicking?" But Miriam could only utter 3 words. "They took it." Miriam's scream echoed through the house long after it faded from her throat. Pastor Richard stared at her in confusion, his breath short, his hand gripping her shoulder. "Miriam," he demanded, "what did they take?" Miriam swallowed hard. Her lips trembled. She wanted to confess everything, to speak of shrines and charms and Dr. Fabian's hands, but the words jammed in her throat. How does one explain a sin that still burns? It, it was something personal, she whispered. Pastor Richard frowned. Personal? Enough to scream like that? Fear climbed up her ribs. She forced her voice steady. It's fine. I'll find it. Richard stared a moment longer, then nodded slowly. We'll talk after church. Even in chaos, ministry came first. He left the room, but his eyes carried suspicion. Not yet knowledge, but the kind of suspicion that grows roots. When the door closed, Miriam collapsed to the floor, tears splashing on the empty wardrobe. Someone had taken the bottle. But who? Detective Briggs? The hooded figure? Dr. Fabian himself? Suddenly, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Missing something? Her body went weak. What do you want? Seconds later, a reply came. To watch how far guilt can travel. Guilt had legs. Now it also had an owner. At Living Grace Chapel that evening, choir voices filled the hall, drums beating with passion, worship thick like mist. The congregation saw glory. Miriam saw danger wearing holy robes. During the sermon, Richard preached about purity, honesty, and the dangers of darkness. Each sentence felt like arrows. When he said, "Nothing hidden stays hidden before God," Miriam's heart thudded against her ribs. Was he preaching at sinners or at her? When the service ended, Bishop Clarence approached Richard privately. Miriam hid behind a pillar, like a timid child, listening. "Pastor," the bishop said carefully, "I sense tension in your home. A pastor's strength begins with his wife." Richard sighed. "I know, Bishop. She is distant, and I don't know why." Miriam closed her eyes, shame settling like fog. Later, while church members hugged and talked, Detective Briggs appeared again, this time without warning, without polite masks. "Miriam," he said quietly, "we need to talk, now." They stepped behind the church office, dim lights flickering. Briggs held up a sealed plastic bag. Inside was the charm bottle. Miriam gasped. Her knees nearly failed her. "Where did you Hush," Briggs whispered. "I have questions. Not answers. Yet." He studied her face as if reading scriptures no one else could see. "Tell me, madam, did you seek love or power?" Tears filled her eyes. "I just wanted my husband back." Briggs nodded slowly. "So you traded body for love, and love for spirits. Dangerous currency." His words cut. "Detective," she begged, "don't tell him, please." Briggs pocketed the bottle. "I don't care for gossip. I care for consequences. People around Dr. Fabian start behaving strangely. Then bad things happen. I need to know if your home is already infected." "Infected?" she whispered. Briggs leaned closer. "Native doctors never give. They only loan. And spirits always come to collect debt." A chill crawled down her spine. Before Miriam could ask more, a shadow appeared near the church wall. The hooded figure again, watching, silent, hungry for secrets. When Briggs noticed him, the figure vanished into the night like smoke. Briggs cursed. "He's faster than rumors." He turned back to Miriam. "Go home. Lock doors. Pray if you still remember how." She didn't know if that was advice or mockery. On her way home, Miriam stared at the city through the car window. Accra was alive. Vendors shouting, motorbikes racing, laughter from bars, gospel music from taxis, but her world felt like a coffin. At home, Richard waited in the living room, Bible on his lap. "Miriam," he said softly, Sit. She obeyed. He studied her for a long time, long enough to see cracks no makeup could hide. "What is happening to you?" he asked quietly. "If you are in trouble, tell me." Her lips parted, ready to confess, ready to break, ready to empty her soul, but the doorbell rang. Richard rose to answer. When he opened the door, a man stood there holding an envelope. He didn't speak. He simply handed it over and walked into the darkness. Richard brought it inside and sat opposite Miriam. "This is addressed to both of us," he said, tearing it open carefully. Inside was a printed photograph, the same photograph of Miriam and Dr. Fabian in the shrine. Richard froze. Shock shattered his face. Miriam whispered, voice breaking, "Richard, He dropped the photo as if it burned him. The morning sun poured over Accra, but in the Fordson house, shadows lingered. Miriam had barely slept, haunted by Dr. Fabian's words and the weight of the envelope she had hidden under her pillow. Every time she thought of Pastor Richard, guilt tightened her chest. Every thought of the envelope made her heart race. Richard noticed her distant gaze at breakfast. "Miriam, what's wrong? You've been quiet for days." Miriam forced a smile. I'm just tired, Richard. Work at the church has been demanding." He frowned, but said nothing. He trusted her, or at least he hoped he did. By noon, Miriam found herself walking the bustling streets of Accra, the envelope clutched tightly in her hand. She had to see Dr. Fabian again. She told herself it was for guidance, for protection, but deep down, she knew it was temptation calling her back. Dr. Fabian's house was hidden in a narrow alley, surrounded by tall, leafy trees that blocked the sun. Miriam's heart pounded as she approached. She could hear faint chanting, rhythmic and hypnotic. Inside, Dr. Fabian welcomed her with a knowing smile. "You've returned, Miriam. The city's energy calls to you, and so does your secret." Miriam swallowed hard. I need help. Things are spiraling out of control." He nodded, stepping closer, his voice low and persuasive. "Power comes at a cost. Are you ready to pay it?" Miriam's eyes flickered to the envelope. Every instinct screamed to leave, but desire, fear, and pride whispered, just one more step, one more spell, one more charm. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Pastor Richard sensed something was wrong. He felt Miriam's absence, her silence, and the tension in their home. He picked up his phone to call her, but it rang only to voicemail. Unease gnawed at him. As Miriam handed over the envelope, Dr. Fabian's eyes gleamed. "Ah, you have taken the first step willingly. Soon, the city will bend to your will or ruin you completely." Miriam hesitated, a cold shiver running down her spine. "And what if I can't control it?" He smiled. "Control is an illusion, my dear. The spirit's answer to me, not you. You only open the door." Back in her empty home, the air seemed heavier. Shadows stretched across walls as Richard paced the living room. Something inside told him danger was near. Suddenly, Detective Briggs arrived unexpectedly, soaked from the rain outside, face stern. "Pastor, we need to talk. Dr. Fabian is not who he seems. He has manipulated families across Accra. If Miriam is involved, she could be in serious danger." Richard's heart sank. "Where is she?" Briggs shook his head. "I don't know, but we can track her, and we must stop him before it's too late." Miriam, meanwhile, felt a strange sensation as Dr. Fabian chanted and sprinkled herbs over the envelope. A cold, unnatural energy filled the room. Fear gripped her chest like icy chains. She realized then, fully, that she was in over her head. The temptation that had drawn her here was no longer about love or attention. It was about survival. And for the first time, she understood the truth. Some doors, once opened, can release shadows that will follow you forever. As night fell over Accra, Miriam left Dr. Fabian's house, the envelope heavy in her hands, and a deep dread settled in her heart. She didn't know how to face Richard or herself, but one thing was clear: the consequences of her choices were only just beginning. Miriam sat in the back of a yellow trotro on her way home from the mansion, gripping the envelope as if it contained her very soul. The sun dipped low, burning the Accra sky orange and gold, but inside her chest, a storm raged fiercer than any sky. The letter had no words, only numbers and symbols. Dr. Fabian's handwriting, ancient and commanding. He had made it clear: every action had a cost, and the shadows of her sins were now closing in. Her mind raced. What if Pastor Richard ever saw this? What if Detective Briggs exposed her? What if the hooded figure was watching? By the time she reached Jameson Street, darkness had settled. The narrow roads smelled of roasted corn and wet asphalt. Children played in puddles, unaware of the adult storms swirling nearby. Miriam hurried to her house, praying the doors would lock out the world. Inside, Pastor Richard was reading, Bible open, his expression serene. But Miriam knew better. Peace in a home built on deceit was like a cracked mirror. It could shatter at any moment. She placed the envelope on the kitchen table and tried to breathe. But before she could, her phone vibrated. Unknown number. Time is short. Your debt grows. Her fingers froze. She wanted to throw the phone, destroy it, hide it forever. But the pull of fear kept her in place. At church the next day, Richard preached about honesty and faithfulness. Every word he spoke, carved into Miriam's heart like a knife. She faked smiles, stood tall, and prayed silently, asking God to forgive her and protect her family. After service, Detective Briggs appeared again, unexpected, calm, almost omnipresent. "Miriam," he said quietly, "I need to know everything about Dr. Fabian. Names, dates, rituals, anything." Her heart thudded. She nodded silently. I will tell you." Briggs' eyes softened slightly. "Do not fear truth. Fear the consequences of hiding it." Later, when Miriam returned home, she found Pastor Richard waiting with the envelope. His hands trembled slightly, an unusual weakness for a man of God. "I received this today," he said quietly. "Somebody is testing our family, or threatening it." Miriam swallowed. It's mine," she whispered. She told him everything: Dr. Fabian, the shrine, the charm, the messages, the shame. Richard's expression changed from confusion to fury, but there was sorrow behind it. "Miriam, how could you do this?" "I was desperate," she said, tears flowing freely. "I only wanted you to love me again. I never thought—" "You went into darkness to force love," Richard interrupted, his voice breaking. "That hurt is dangerous, not only for us, but for the church, for our souls." Silence fell. They both felt the weight of the unseen. Suddenly, another message arrived on Miriam's phone. Unknown number. Debt unpaid. "Tonight, you will see what darkness can take." Before she could react, a shadow moved past the window. The hooded figure, closer this time, watching, waiting. Panic gripped her. Richard noticed her trembling and tried to console her, but she pushed him gently aside. Fear had found a home in her chest. Night fell, heavy and suffocating. Miriam held the envelope, the bottle now recovered by Detective Briggs, and prayed silently. Every choice she had made, the charm, the lies, the secret visits, had built a wall between her and the man she loved. Then, at 2:03 a.m., a loud knock shook the house. Both froze. Richard approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, he saw no one, but an envelope lay at the doorstep. This one was different, bigger, thick, with dark stains along the edges. Miriam picked it up with shaking hands. Inside was a single card, written in bold black letters. "Your sins have names, and they will call you soon." Miriam gasped. Her whole body went cold. She clutched Richard's arm, but even his warmth could not erase the chill spreading through her soul. They had survived storms, manipulations, secrets, but now the consequences were no longer invisible. The shadows were real, and the ghosts of decisions they had ignored were coming to collect. The moon hung low over Accra, casting silver light on the streets of Jameson. The city slept uneasily, unaware that one house held a storm stronger than any wind outside. Miriam paced the living room, her bare feet echoing softly on the tiled floor. The envelope from Chapter 6 still sat on the table, its black letters mocking her. She had tried to pray, tried to ignore it, but fear refused to leave. Pastor Richard sat nearby, Bible open but unread. His eyes were dark with worry, not anger. He sensed the weight of shadows in the house, but he did not yet know the source. At exactly 12:03 a.m., the power flickered and then went out. Darkness swallowed the house. Miriam's heart stopped. A knock came at the door, sharp, unrelenting. Richard rose slowly. "Who's there?" His voice was steady, but his hands trembled slightly. No answer. Just another knock, louder this time. Miriam whispered, "It's him, the hooded figure." Richard grabbed a flashlight from the shelf. The beam cut through darkness, landing on nothing. Empty doorway. But the shadow shifted. From the darkness emerged Detective Briggs. He was soaked from the rain outside. "Pastor," he said urgently, "we don't have time. Dr. Fabian is coming. He knows the bottle has been recovered." Miriam gasped. "What does he want?" Briggs' eyes were cold. "He wants repayment. He always collects. You've interfered with forces you don't understand." Suddenly, a cold wind swept through the room. The envelope on the table lifted slightly, as if touched by invisible fingers. Miriam screamed. Then a voice, a deep, commanding whisper, cut through the darkness. "Bring her to me, and the debt will be paid." Miriam froze. Richard stepped forward, protective. "Who's there? Show yourself." The whisper faded, but the air remained thick, oppressive. Briggs muttered, "He's testing you. Spirits obey him. But this is human cunning too. He'll come tonight." The storm outside grew louder. Rain hammered the windows. Lightning flashed, illuminating a figure at the window. The hooded man, watching, silent, waiting. Miriam clutched Richard's arm. "We can't let him in. We have to fight this together." Richard nodded. "No secrets tonight. Whatever happens, we face it as one." The clock ticked toward 1 a.m., then 1:17 a.m. A loud crash erupted from the back door. Something heavy hit the wall. The flashlight beam swung wildly. Dr. Fabian appeared, not fully, but enough to make Miriam's blood freeze. His eyes glowed with unnatural intensity. His hands held herbs, powders, and charms. "You took what was mine," he hissed. "Now you will pay." Richard stepped in front of Miriam. "This house is under God's protection. Leave now or face his wrath." Dr. Fabian laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think your prayers can stop me? You meddle with forces you barely understand." Miriam's mind raced. She remembered the bottle, the envelope, the messages. She realized that fear alone was not enough. Action was needed. Briggs shouted, "Pastor, cover her. I'll handle him." Dr. Fabian threw a powder into the air. Darkness thickened. Shadows twisted. Miriam felt a cold hand brush her shoulder. Was it Fabian, or one of the spirits he commanded? Richard grabbed her hands. "Miriam, remember who you are. Faith is stronger than fear." Miriam closed her eyes and whispered a prayer from deep inside her soul. She asked for forgiveness, strength, and protection. She did not ask for the past to disappear. She asked for courage. The darkness quivered. The whisper returned, "You cannot escape." But then, the bottle in Briggs's hand began to glow faintly. A soft golden light spread through the room. Dr. Fabian recoiled, startled. The shadows shrieked. Briggs threw the bottle to the floor. It shattered. A wave of light burst outward. The oppressive presence of Dr. Fabian and the spirits he commanded screamed, then vanished. Miriam collapsed into Richard's arms, trembling. Tears streamed down her face. But this time, there was relief. Dr. Fabian was gone. The hooded figure had disappeared. The envelope lay untouched. Silence filled the house, deep, heavy, cleansing. Richard held her tightly. "You faced your sins together. That is what matters. Never let fear separate us again." Miriam nodded, exhausted, heart racing, but she finally understood. The path back to love and trust was not through secrets, charms, or fear. It was through honesty, courage, and faith. Outside, Accra returned to its normal rhythm. Cars honking, dogs barking, streetlights flickering. But inside the Fordson house, something had shifted. Shadows remained, but light had returned. The morning after the storm, the Fordson house felt quiet but charged. Miriam sat at the kitchen table, the envelope still folded neatly in front of her. The bottle was gone, shattered by Detective Briggs, but the shadow of guilt still lingered. Pastor Richard entered, his white shirt crisp, but his eyes carried fatigue. "Miriam," he said softly, "I want honesty. No more hiding." Miriam swallowed. Her throat was dry, but she knew it was time. "Richard, I need to tell you everything. About Dr. Fabian. About the shrine, the charm, and the messages." Richard sat opposite her. Silence stretched, punctuated only by the soft hum of the city outside. Miriam began, tears spilling. "I went to him because I felt unloved. You were distant. The church, the ministry, everything. I wanted your attention. I didn't know how else to get it." Richard's eyes darkened, not with anger, but pain. "You traded faith for magic?" Miriam nodded. "I was desperate. I thought I was helping, bringing you back. But I lost myself. I made deals I couldn't control. And then the envelope came. The bottle, I... Richard reached out and held her hand. His touch was steady. "Miriam, we are human, and humans err, but hiding it only makes the consequences worse." Just then, Detective Briggs arrived again, calm but serious. "Pastor, madam, I've traced Dr. Fabian. He's not far from here. He's been manipulating other families in Accra, and he knows you've interfered." Miriam shivered. "What does he want?" Briggs shook his head. "Control. Power. And he doesn't like it when his plans are disrupted. Richard's jaw tightened. Then we face him together. No more fear. No more secrets. Even as they spoke, the doorbell rang. Slowly, Richard opened the door. A small, frail woman stood there, a neighbor. She trembled. I need to speak to you. About Dr. Fabian. He's dangerous. She handed Miriam a small notebook. I kept records of what he did to people he tricked, just like you. Miriam opened it. Names, dates, rituals, photographs, dozens of victims, families destroyed, careers ruined, and in one corner, a photo of her. Her blood ran cold. How did he get this? The neighbor whispered. He has spies everywhere. But you're brave. You stopped him. Richard took the notebook. This will help us expose him. Finally, Accra needs to know the truth. Miriam's phone vibrated. Unknown number. Stop, or the world will know your sins. She ignored it. For the first time, she felt courage. Later that evening, they gathered evidence, photographs, and testimonies. Detective Briggs arranged a meeting with journalists and local authorities. Miriam, for the first time in months, felt light. The weight of secrecy was lifting. But Dr. Fabian was clever. That night, Miriam noticed a shadow outside her window. The hooded figure, waiting, silent, observing. Richard held her hand tightly. No matter what happens, we are together. Miriam nodded. And we will fight. For our family. For our souls. For truth. As the city of Accra slept beneath the starless night, Miriam realized that the path to redemption was not easy. The past was a ghost, but honesty, courage, and love were her weapons. Some debts had to be faced, some sins had to be confessed, and some shadows had to be chased into the light. The sun rose over Accra, golden and unforgiving. The city seemed alive with movement, but inside the Fordson house, tension simmered like a pot ready to boil over. Miriam sat at the kitchen table, the notebook open before her. She traced the names of Dr. Fabian's other victims, the dates, the rituals, the manipulations. Each one was a scar on someone else's life. Each one a warning. Richard entered, calm but determined. We have to act today, he said. Accra needs to know the truth. Secrets only strengthen the darkness. Miriam nodded. But Dr. Fabian, he's clever. He could strike back. Detective Briggs appeared, leaning against the doorway, arms crossed. We've set up everything. Journalists, police, witnesses. Today, his network ends. The hooded figure? Gone. Fabian is exposed, or he is finished. The plan was simple but risky. Present irrefutable evidence of Fabian's schemes in a public meeting attended by media, church officials, and law enforcement. By afternoon, the venue was buzzing. Camera flashes, reporters with notebooks, pastors and church leaders murmuring, all under the heavy gaze of Detective Briggs. Miriam and Richard entered together, the notebook clutched tightly in Miriam's hands. The first shock came when Dr. Fabian himself appeared. Slim, confident, eyes cold as ice. He smiled at the crowd, a predator in a sea of prey. Miriam's heart hammered. She remembered the envelopes, the charms, the fear, the shadows. But this time, she did not falter. Richard stepped forward. Ladies and gentlemen, today we reveal the truth, not to humiliate, but to protect. There is darkness that hides behind charm and deceit. It has touched many, but no longer. Briggs stepped beside them and opened the notebook. Photographs, names, messages, rituals, all laid bare for the world to see. Flashbulbs popped, murmurs grew into whispers. The room held its breath. Miriam spoke next, voice shaking at first, but growing steady. I was part of this deception. I sought attention, love, and approval in ways I should never have. I cannot undo the past, but I can help prevent others from falling. Gasps ran through the crowd. Fabian's confident smile faltered. His eyes darted to the police station at the back. A reporter asked, "Dr. Fabian, what do you say to these allegations?" For the first time, he hesitated. "These accusations are false." His voice cracked, and he scanned the room. No one flinched. No one stepped back. The tide had turned. Briggs motioned. Two officers approached Fabian. "You are under investigation for fraud, manipulation, and endangering lives. You will answer for your actions." Fabian's expression darkened, rage and fear warring in his eyes. He tried to push past them, but the officers held firm. The hooded figure, who had always lurked in shadows, was gone. Fabian was alone. Miriam felt tears sting her eyes, relief mixed with guilt. The nightmare was ending, but the lesson remained. Secrets are dangerous. Deception costs more than one imagines. After the arrest, Richard pulled Miriam close. "You were brave," he whispered. "This is the first step back to trust, back to love, back to our family." Miriam nodded, and back to honesty. No more shortcuts, no more fear. That evening, the city of Accra seemed different. The streets were the same, but Miriam and Richard felt renewed. Shadows may linger, but light always follows those willing to face the truth. For the first time in months, they laughed together, genuinely, in the privacy of their home. The past could not be erased, but its hold had been broken. Miriam knew one thing: courage, honesty, and faith had saved them. Not charms, not manipulation, not fear. And from this day, she vowed, no secret, no matter how tempting, would ever take precedence over love, truth, and family again. The first rays of sunlight spilled over Accra, painting the city in shades of gold and amber. Inside the Fordson house, the atmosphere was different, calm, warm, almost sacred. The storms of the past months, the lies, secrets, and fear had finally passed, leaving only lessons and the possibility of healing. Miriam sat at the breakfast table, sunlight catching her hair, a soft smile on her face. For the first time in months, her hands were steady and her heart lighter. Beside her, Pastor Richard poured tea, a small, genuine smile curving his lips. "We finally have peace," Richard said softly. "It feels good, doesn't it?" Miriam nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, and I know now that nothing is worth losing faith, trust, or honesty." Detective Briggs had left earlier in the morning, satisfied that Dr. Fabian's network had been dismantled. The hooded figure had vanished from their lives, leaving only memories of fear and lessons learned. Later, Miriam decided to make amends beyond her household. She visited the families who had been manipulated by Dr. Fabian. She offered apologies and shared what she had learned. Each tear she wiped, each hand she shook, helped lift the weight from her soul. Richard accompanied her, silently proud. "Courage is not in never falling," he whispered. "It's in rising after every fall." Days later, the church held a special service. Miriam and Richard stood together on the pulpit, speaking to the congregation about honesty, courage, and the dangers of seeking shortcuts in life. Their words were met with nods, soft applause, and tears in many eyes. Miriam's heart swelled, not from pride, but from gratitude. Gratitude for forgiveness, for love that endured, and for lessons that would guide her future. That evening, in the quiet of their living room, Miriam and Richard sat together. A warm breeze drifted through open windows, carrying the sounds of Accra's night, the laughter of children, distant music, the hum of life. Richard took her hands in his. "We have a chance to rebuild, Miriam. Not just our marriage, but our hearts, our trust, and our family." She looked into his eyes, filled with honesty, forgiveness, and love. "And we will. Together." For the first time in months, the past felt like a shadow behind them. Dark, but no longer threatening. Every secret confessed, every consequence faced, had led them here, to light, to understanding, to love renewed. Miriam realized that life's true magic was not in charms, shortcuts, or hidden rituals. It was in courage, honesty, faith, and the bonds of family. She had learned that fear can teach, but love can heal, and love grows strongest in truth. As night fell over Accra, the city hummed softly, oblivious to the personal storms that had raged within one home. But inside the Fordson house, there was laughter, warmth, and light. A family broken by fear and deception had found its way back, not through power or manipulation, but through truth, courage, and forgiveness. And in that moment, Miriam understood the shadows of yesterday could never touch the light of today. Dear viewers, what lesson did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear from your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and hit the subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching and stay blessed.